16th of May, 2022. Make sure to go to my official YouTube channel to subscribe and like my official YouTube video. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is also www.ladydorybell.com. I'm going to give a forewarning. This particular official YouTube video, I'm going to have some words. And so I'm going to start off with, there was this douchebag that I had met, and I didn't really like him. I accepted the fact that he was a part of my ex-in-laws, but he was just a douchebag. And so he had gone into the chair force. I apologize, rest of you guys who actually are worthwhile in the Air Force. However, this douchebag named David Osteen was exactly that. Just a douchebag who had thought he was more important, especially to my ex-in-laws, most importantly to Grandpa Nichols, in comparison to what he actually wasn't. And so I'm going to go and start off with the story of the irony of ironies. I had actually been in a performance where in exotic Easter time frame, which is an irony because it's exotic Easter and it's a group called Temple of Flesh, which is a swingers group. Now, the play that I had been in actually had a character named Douche. And so David Osteen, there's this guy, I really like his music. He lives in Georgia, or he's from Georgia, and he said he likes females with double D's. So David the Douche, I don't know whether or not he'd actually like Mary, though I do like Ludacris. So I don't know if he'd be okay with me, but I do like Luda. I don't really view Ludacris as a douchebag. However, David the douchebag Osteen, which is an irony and a different reference, nonetheless, he and Mary lived in Macon, Georgia, back in the time frame when I knew them, which, wasn't long ago enough. So, in the exotic Easter reference, David had been in orphanages, and it was a Catholic orphanage. So that's why there's the irony in regards to Easter time frame. Now, there's also a few other ironies to David the douchebag, which is an irony regarding exotic Easter, because if you actually were to see the physical picture of the individual who played douche in exotic Easter, if you were to have ginger red hair, that soulless type, you could almost add a few freckles and he would actually be a physical representation as douche in exotic Easter of David Osteen, in my opinion. This is my opinion, of course. However, if other people just so happen to see how that looks, possibly, just possibly, there could be certain similarities in that particular reference. So David the douche in the exotic Easter reference had a character that went along with named Bitch, although Mary, Evangelina Nichols Osteen, that is what she tended to do. She did tend to bitch a lot, which is irony because my biological father had gone on about how most certain types of females just bitch, bitch, bitch. And so, there is the irony that bitch and douche had gone into a location and they thought that all these individuals were toys in comparison to the characters in exotic Easter. The other irony is that it's the swinging community in comparison to the BDSM community. And so there is that distinctive difference between someone who is more BDSM compared to David and Mary Osteen, or bitch and douche. However you choose to look at this metaphor. Personal preference, I'm going to go with the exotic Easter reference. Look, I made a rhyme. So anyway, the first time I met David the douche in this particular reference, because I'm going to use this as a metaphor, as a little parable in regards of the exotic Easter, as a little bit of a prolonged situation, because I can. So in the prior time frame, as to having the toy master regarding that particular exotic Easter reference, okay? Grandpa Nichols, because Grandpa Nichols, unlike some people, actually earned his rank as well as earned his medals. Unlike my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, unlike her dead relative, he did not actually earn rank. And so since I realized, and yes, this is in the year of 2022, it took me this many years to figure out that whole aspect of my lack of understanding regarding individuals who call themselves Black because of my viewpoint in reference to African American. However, if I remember correctly, ironically, I think he had an English accent, so that aspect of it, and he is darker in complexion by far than myself, obviously. By far, by a lot. He's also a smidgen darker in complexion to 44. Just for clarification, his skin tone, if I remember correctly, is more similar to Miss Michelle, First Lady of the United States of America, Obama. Fairly certain. Now, Grandpa Nichols, because he passed away shortly after Mary's dead relative, her dead brother, that my dead ex-husband had acknowledged the two of them had a tryst of an affair with one another throughout their childhood. So he had actually defended incest with his sister Mary. I did not agree. So personal preference to have an issue with that. And there is an irony regarding how Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen's daughters look. It is as it is. And Ariel Nicole Osteen, well, when my dead ex-husband, or Mary's brother that died, was in the army, he went by the nickname Nick. So there's that little bit of irony. So in this proverbial aspect as to, the little proverbial metaphor, if you will, regarding my ex-in-laws, most specifically douche and bitch as David, which is an irony of irony, and then Mary, his wife. When I first met them, David tried certain aspects of kind of the puffing of a chest sort of thing, which I really didn't see any reason why. I guess in some ways, as most army guys know, Grandpa Nichols was there. He had actually earned his rank and different medals. Aside from the dress blue situation, my children's biological father, my dead ex-husband, was there. And then Tony, who had been in the army, he was there, or known about. So, those who know the Army Air Force issue, David kind of tried. If you look at a psychological viewpoint, he had to show up on his Harley Davidson motorcycle to hypothetically, be more manly for going in the Air Force compared to Grandpa Nichols with his military background, compared to then, I'm medically retired from the Army. I didn't graduate basic training, though he knew I was born and raised in New Jersey, so, that little Harley Davidson motorcycle sort of thing. I mean, aside from the fact that that particular size of a motorcycle, I definitely could pick up using it like a baseball bat. However, that's a whole other aspect. It was one of those small ones, the beginner. And that's fine. I know that everybody has their own type of motorcycle situation, but when you're rolling in to try to, in that hypothetical, I could be being a smidgen, what's the term, snarky. However, if I'm accurate, because of the facts that Tony had been in the army, Mary's brother that was known to have had, that reference, because it was known in the high school, by the way, as far as Fort Worth High School in that reference. So there's that, among a few other situations that hypothetically in those references. So there were these situations. That is true. So there were these situations where David had sat in the other rocking chair in the living room, and as Mary, Grandpa Nichols' daughter, started talking about the swinging lifestyle in front of her younger sister, which older than me, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, and in front of both of their daughters. So Mary's daughters, Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen, were listening, as well as Brianna Marie Nichols Lopez and Marissa Marie Nichols Lopez, listening to their Aunt Mary go on and on about the swinging lifestyle, as I was pregnant with my son, and it was known that I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain at the time. And so this is obviously shortly before the blue identification card of and for the Armed Forces of the United States of America. This is why I find irony, because the toy master, in reference to Exotic Easter, he had worn a blue business suit and all sorts of light stuff intertwined. And if you know what a blue ID card looks as, it'd be a different version by far. And since the picture is black and white grayscale, obviously I have short hair. His hair is obviously different than mine. Obviously. However, I have short hair, and so does he. And so it's not the same, obviously. I totally understand that. Just pointing the ironies out. So, then you have the reference point of bitch and douche or Mary and David, in my opinion. This is just, I've already given the warning. This is a proverbial aspect. So, David sat there in the little chair. The chair was bigger than the motorcycle, as far as obviously it is as it is. And so he sat in the chair as his wife spoke in front of his father-in-law, Grandpa Nichols, about them and their involvement in the swinging lifestyle, as though it was supposed to, I don't know if they were trying to kind of bring certain things up because of the factors in reference to my dead ex-husband, Mary's brother, because she continuously looked over at my dead ex-husband in front of the four daughters and, oh, well, blah, 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 it's been wonderful, and I had this queasy feeling in my tummy, and it wasn't because I was pregnant. So, just pointing that out there. And so, Mary tried to defend certain things similarly to my dead ex-husband as to incest, and I said under no certain terms would I ever approve of it. It didn't matter what, it didn't matter who, it would always be a disgrace to me. Period and end of story. And so no matter how much some might try, and if you do so, just think of the fact that you would actually go out of your way to try to prove that incest would ever give those references in comparison to what's actually best. So, there's those factors. Now, I know that there is the reality in the armed forces of the United States of America. Why go down the street when you can go down the hall? Because of the barracks in comparison to biological incest, which the biological incest is what's wrong, in my opinion, though also scientifically proven. So, as Grandpa Nichols, he could not even look at Mary at all while she was flirting ish with my then husband, her brother. It was a very weird situation, and I explained this to people, and people thought I was joking. I did not find it so funny, but this is my personal viewpoint and take on that. So, those particular individuals, as far as those situations. So, in the starting point of Exotic Easter, Bitch and Douche walk in to this area, and there's a bunch of toys in the different areas, but they're characters in the show. And so, irony of ironies, especially with certain things regarding David, if there just so happened to be a version of a Jack in the Box, which chased him around with the strap on and sorts of stuff like that, and that capacity. And then other situations in reference to the Russian dolls that were, females, but they were characters and had done certain things. And I could easily see a few females that I once knew being a smidgen upset if they were to ever find out certain factors regarding my ex-in-laws, specifically Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen and her two daughters, regarding Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen. Sure that I can think of a few females that could actually fit into these categories, ironically. And then the Barbie in that particular reference, I can think of a few people in this reference that would actually be quite befitting in reference to as to an irony. So anyway, as Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen went and talked about in front of Brianna Marie Nichols Lopez and in front of Marissa Marie Nichols Lopez, unless their last names were just Lopez and it was only Susie Marie Nichols Lopez as far as the hyphenated name, nonetheless, and also in front of Joseph Anthony Lopez. So while pregnant, yet again, listening to Mary talk about how wonderful the swinging lifestyle was, and randomly touching David while then looking over at me and then looking over at her brother. So I'm just going to leave that as for everybody else's perception of what that would translate to, those particular references, and no thank you. So I have standards. So, and that is definitely a no-go in every capacity, personal opinion. So fast forward to Lackland Air Force Base, and those references regarding David's graduation, and it's after my blue identification card and for the Armed Forces of the United States of America situation in reference to the facts as to how my blue ID card all of a sudden went missing after having gotten onto the military installation, and there were only 3 people in the car. There was only Mary Evangelina, maiden name Nichols Osteen, and her 2 daughters, Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen. I did not ever give them that because obviously, and Mary had told me that I didn't need to worry about it because she knew that I could go and get another one because it's easy for the military to do that in comparison. So, this is scene one of Exotic Easter. And so there's the little graduation ceremony. Gave a few pointers, pun intended if you know about the breed. Nonetheless, there was an MP who had little German Shepherd Fluffy Fluffy. And while pregnant, okay, I can acknowledge in my defense, I had just woken up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday the year before, and it was just a puppy dog. Sure, an MP was holding the puppy dog's leash. Okay, that's nice. It's still a fluffy little puppy. And so, I, being myself, who's a little fluffy? Who's a little fluffy? And, the German Shepherd MP canine unit dog was like, oh, yeah, let's play. Which then the MP guy was like, don't do that. And, the dog was, and I stood up and I was like, oh, I wanted to pet the puppy dog. And the MP, to the little fluffy. And then he was like, ma'am, you are not allowed to pet the canine dog. It's just a little puppy dog. And mind you, this German Shepherd's tail was wagging. And it's just like, oh, that's great. I know we can play. And it's like, I know, I could totally play with this little puppy. And so, again, pregnant, it was as it was. And so, it's just a canine unit dog. For the military. What's the big deal? Other than they're trained a certain way. However, I did discuss things with him. And I brought up a few ideas in reference to, well, if that's not supposed to occur, then you probably should retrain that dog. Because if the canine unit dog is not supposed to, whatever, well then, it should probably end. It was a few months before the 11th of September 2001, so I made a few reference points and suggestions at that point in time, and so that went the way it did. So afterwards, there was the graduation ceremony, and then went into the barracks area. And as I was walking, or I should say waddling, because I was massively, hugely pregnant. I had gained over 75 pounds when I was pregnant with my son. So I was a smidgen large. I may have had a huge beach ball as far as the viewpoint as to how big my stomach was. I was huge, hugely pregnant. My hips popped. Maybe I can make a joke in reference to why I have to wear corsets to have the sensation that I actually have hips in comparison. Because I can tell you right now, compared to, I had a big old belly. I used to be capable to put a full-size plate on my stomach. Because I know that there are females, I didn't have to sit, by the way, for this. So while pregnant, for females who've been pregnant, you know how you've had to sit, I could stand and put a full-size plate on my belly. And that's how big I was. Yes. And then there was my ass. Yes, it was thick is the way to put it. Thick. I was thick when it came to that. Now I'm little. I'm still strong, but I'm little. My butt is no longer that size at all. No. not in the slightest. I have no more junk in the trunk at all whatsoever. And then there was my, no, 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 no. You know, when delivering a child, that tends to happen. So, anyway, walk into the barracks area, and one of the drill instructors walks up and looks at me and says, "Oh, David, is that your wife?" And I said, "No, I'm not his wife, thank you. I'm going to get out of the way," because, of course, at that moment, Mary Evangelista, "No, no, 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 no," as far as her southern accent and stuff, and it was very much clarified, no. Number one, first and foremost, I wasn't interested. Secondly, absolutely not, because I'm not that type of individual. And third, absolutely not, just to be 100% clear. And so, you know, was as it was. I had ironically been informed shortly before that some people find pregnant females attractive, which I had this odd sensation to reiterate over and over again. Yeah, no, I'm not his wife. I'm not interested in him. You got that right, especially after that discussion at Grandpa Nichols's house. So it was one of those, yeah, no, like, no, just no, I don't, like, there's no, and then there's no, and then there's no, also no, and no, absolutely no. So, you know, different way to spell no. And so that went the way it did. And fast forward to 2008, and this will be the second part of the reference to Exotic Easter in 2011. Okay, so my dead ex-husband died. It was during the second and final separation. And everyone in my ex-in-laws knew that I had not been awake from my coma for even a full year by the time that I was taken off of a military installation. They all knew that. They all knew that I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. Each and every one of them. They knew that that was the reality. They knew that I had memory deficits. They knew I had cognitive disorders. They knew that I had been diagnosed with all these other factors, including my headaches and migraines. They also knew that I had been rated from having gone from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. My ex-in-laws, all of them knew this. They all knew. And so they, again, knew that I had been in a coma, and they knew that I had not been awake from my coma for, realistically, it wasn't even 6 months of being awake, because it was in September that I was taken off, or maybe October that I was taken off of the military installation the first time, before being moved out of the military installation. So my ex-in-laws knew this. Okay? So in 2008, when it was known that we had already been fully separated for over a year and a half by that point, it was known about my dead ex-husband regarding his stress blues, as far as quite a few people in the San Antonio, Texas area before 2007 in September, where the pictures were done at JCPenney's. So since 2004, those dress blues with that stolen valor, which I didn't find out about until 2008, because I didn't know. I didn't graduate basic training. So I wouldn't know the different ribbons. For example, the Vietnam War ribbon. That would be one example of a ribbon that I wouldn't know. First and foremost, because I did not graduate basic training. Secondly, because I wasn't alive during the time frame of Vietnam War. Grandpa Nichols did 4 tours in Vietnam. However, my dead ex-husband did not, because of the reality. So then there's the situations in reference to that the chief warrant officer tree, when in Laurelland in Fort Worth, Texas, refused to speak with any of my ex-in-laws because the one and only person that the Army legally could speak with would be me. And that's it. I'm the one and only executrix. Always have been the one and only executrix because on the day of, and it's not transferable unless I do paperwork, which I haven't. So, there's not that allowance. Now, my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, anybody who knows her knows hypothetically how, in the reference of the character Bitch in Exotic Easter 2011, could see certain similarities as to going up to the different individuals and poking them and pulling them around and stirring some stuff up and, you know, not getting her way and throwing a temper tantrum, and the toy master being like, don't do that. Don't push that. And so the chief warrant officer tree had to legally wait until I arrived. I would not be surprised if my ex-sister-in-law tried using the dependent aspect to David Osteen as a way to try to get information. I also wouldn't be surprised if David Osteen didn't pay attention to the fact that his wife had been having an affair with her brother multiple years well before ever having met him. So, you know, then there's that and that over-emotional situation, which that black stone with the engravement of that Mary had to have done from a friend that David knew that was in the Air Force. If you wanted to procrastinate in certain reference to accepting the reality as to the dress blues in regards of my ex-sister-in-law and David and the time frame in San Antonio, Texas, where there's Lackland Air Force Base because they lack the ground to stand on, Kelly Air Force Base because, you know, the envy and jealousy and certain references, Brooks Randolph Air Force Base, well, you know, I did have a couple convertibles and, you know, there is that reality, and then, well, there's Brooks in a different reference, you know, in regards to not necessarily what's supposed to be considered as the adult consenting lifestyle. However, you know, certain females can do certain things. So then there's Fort Sam Houston, and I have been a smidgen patriotic for a while, and then there's Camp Bullis because I wouldn't tolerate their bullshit. In my opinion, this is a fun little aspect as to Military City, USA. And then, you know, to make a different joke than that. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. She had some very shiny hair. And if you ever saw it at night, you would even say it close. All of the other ex-in-laws, she used to laugh and call her names. She didn't really give a flying fuck if they wouldn't let her in the room to reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, the Pentagon came to say, Susan, with your hair so bright, won't you guide? Because there's the reference of the New Jersey flag tonight. Oh, how the reindeer. And so I'll just leave that at that. It is as it is, nonetheless. So, 2004, Mary's, I don't know if you say dead ex-boyfriend and ex-brother or whatever. Nonetheless, had been wearing dress blues with stolen valor around Military City, USA since the year 2004. So in this particular reference, okay, so in the second portion of Temple of Flesh's exotic Easter. The big reveal is, hey, little ballerina. Me, which that's a different irony that I had informed Steve about because, and so I have some heeled boots. They're not the exact same. I'm gonna need to because I can. And so real quick, because I had to be a little ballerina. In comparison, now there was classical music playing, nonetheless. In comparison, though they are a smidgen militaristic, if I do say so myself. Nonetheless, so in the second act of the play regarding bitch and douche, or Mary Evangelina Osteen and David Osteen, David the douche Osteen, in this particular, metaphor regarding the exotic Easter situation that Temple of Flesh put on in San Antonio, Texas, no less. They had been very abusive to the others in the scene, such as the Jack in the Box female, and then the Russian toy soldiers, and then the reference to the Barbie. And then when getting to me, it was yeah, no, that's not okay. Yeah, no. See, I won't play that. No, I won't play. I'm BDSM, I'm not swinger. I can do some-ish swinging. However, when I make this joke, I did earn second and third place in sparring and form in an international competition. So I don't think that's the same version of swinging. I could be incorrect, however, I also handled the ocean. And just because David Osteen's daughter, Ariel Nicole Osteen, I am enjoying saying that right now. Little Nikki right there, little Nicole. It's not my fault that her middle name is Nick Ole. So, it's okay. And then there's the irony of, there's a certain type of terminology in reference to an annoying type of person. So there's Nick Ole. So, Ariel Nick Ole Osteen. And so it's so easy. Probably similarly is porcupine viewpoint for those who understand that particular meaning, especially to her mom. And I can say that in truth because of the facts. So, it is as it is. So, in this little metaphor of bitch and douche, or Mary Evangelina Osteen, because that's the married name, and then ironies, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, regarding my mail letter, our project trips, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, so Mary, and so then there's David or douche, whatever, as far as the Osteen part. Oh, I bet you wish you had a stein full of some alcohol right now to however, those particular situations. So one, in reference to, I didn't ask for their assistance in my life at all. So I didn't ever want them involved in my life. I didn't care how they might view certain things. It's called consent. That has to occur, and I have not given my consent because that would be required. Secondly, if in reference to how I dealt with CID, despite the fact that the Chief Warrant Officer Tree had explained the pictures that came from the JCPenney Portrait Studio, if I dealt with being interrogated by CID because David Osteen, or douche, had contacted the military and lied under oath because of the way that would be, because of the knowledge that the Chief Warrant Officer Tree had explained the stolen valor, it's not rocket science to be in the state of Texas, but especially Military City, USA, stirring up needless drama. Well, Act 3 is where a revolution is led. And yours truly takes center stage. I don't really have that many lines in this particular situation, so maybe this particular explanation makes up for those lines that I really didn't mind not having. At the time frame, though, it might assist with a few things. So, there's a few situations where bitch and douche, or David and Mary in this particular reference, although I suppose you might be capable to interchange the names of bitch and douche because, depending on certain situations, as far as specifically the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle regarding swingers and female, it depends. And then, let's be honest, if David decided to listen to Mary more often and just became her little bitch, well, then that is what it is, and interchangeable names. See, gender fluid. And so, which is an irony when you think about 2001 and the issues as far as Candlelight Coffee House when it came to Mary Evangeline Nichols. And the, oh, there's gay people. Yeah, they exist. Surprise, but not. Which is an irony because it's on North St. Mary Street. And so, yeah. So then there's that. Yeah. And so the North, New Jersey, in the Civil War, handled business as far as that's concerned. So, I was born and raised in the Northeast. And so, so in this little situation in the third portion of Temple of Flesh's Exotic Easter in the year of 2011, yours truly leads all of the others against bitch and douche, because all of the others needlessly went through a bunch of stuff because bitch and douche decided to think that it was just an open market sort of toy store in comparison to paying attention to human beings. And since I had to explain to Mary about her two daughters as to the differences between online social media and in-person, face-to-face, in-person sorts of reality situations, there are those factors as well. As to an irony regarding, so then there are the facts of the hypothetical. If David Osteen, in reference to the Air Force, had contacted some people and lied, because I didn't graduate basic training. And then there's the situations of what I personally dealt with needlessly, because why would those people ever pay attention that my son and my daughter would be caught in the crossfire? Because why would they care about life when they're those types of people in that hypothetical? And so while the hypothetical of my ex-sister-in-law caring more about her dead brother, which, okay, there is the understanding of being sad about a dead relative, there's a whole different ball of wax to make an effigy of a dead relative by your own aspects in comparison. And the size of the stone was like this tall. I mean, Grandpa Nichols it's actually funny. Grandpa Nichols had, at the time frame of his son's funeral, which Mary wasn't ever appreciative as to what I had arranged, because why would she? One of those pretentious types. tried to call herself a Georgian Southern belle, having been born in Louisiana. I'm fairly certain Louisiana is not Georgia. I know I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, though I'm fairly certain Louisiana is called Louisiana and not Georgia, probably because Louisiana is Louisiana. And then Georgia's Georgia because it's called Georgia and not Louisiana. However, Mary Osteen had claimed that she was a Georgian Southern belle, which didn't make sense to me because probably people who are born and raised in Georgia probably consider themselves Georgians and might hypothetically be a smidgen offended. They might do something similar to what Texas does of, well, you know, we got 4 generations back in our lineage. Sort of situation, or, well, my grandpappy, you know, sort of situation. I have dealt with that before. I have, in Texas. So I would not be surprised if in Georgia, well, in our family, we do have some that were a part of the original founding of the Georgia state of Georgia. I do declare. And so, I don't know if that's actually how they sound, maybe, although that's of course a male, you know, because then I swear, they are Southern male. I can't even. Even for this lecture, hold on. Oh, I can't, hold on. Well, I do declare my name has been known as Lady Doorbell. And though I know I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I may have regrown up in the South, but you can take the New Jersey girl or female out of New Jersey. You cannot take the New Jersey out of the. It's just not gonna happen. Unless, you know, and I can say this is truth because I had a head injury. And I was in a coma for a while, and I had this thing called a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that took 8.5 years before it fully dissipated out of the MRI and CAT scans. So, you know, I'm still New Jerseyan, but that's only, you know, that's more of a joking sort of way compared to how I was informed. That if I get angry, that's when, not when I raise my voice, when I get angry. And there's certain, as I was informed, certain New Jerseyan tendencies which I wouldn't know because, you know, I don't, it is what it is. I'm just saying that's what I've been told. You know, it is what it is. So, in the third portion of Exotic Easter, ironically, in 2011, though some other factors, if in 2008, to the reference of the second portion, and I dealt with being interrogated by CID, which I would have a problem, rightfully so, because I dealt with that for 4, 5, 6 hours, where there were 2 different CID agents that switched out over that time frame 2 by 2, where I dealt with that as far as that's concerned. In comparison to a whiny little douche bitch that might have needed to just accept the fact that his wife had already had a relationship with her dead brother in that capacity of all he has to do is look at the youngest daughter, Ariel Nick Osteen. As far as that's concerned, he'd know whether or not she cried a whole bunch more than would be considered as normal to a relative in that capacity, and what other effigies that, whiny, complaining, whatever, especially coming up in my house up in Carrollton, thinking that I need to have more pictures of her dead brother. Excuse me, last I checked, we had been separated for over a year and a half. Why do I need her running her mouth up in my house? She's lucky because it stands in my ground, and I had every right. So, my Medal of Honor art project stuff. Modern day book. So, especially, referencing to CID, as far as there was a booking, that reference, knowing for a fact that the Chief Warrant Officer tree in Fort Worth, but because certain types of Air Force guys, which there is a difference between a chair force individual, such as the reality that David was sitting in a chair as his wife was discussing the swinging lifestyle in Grandpa and Grandma Nichols' house in front of Grandpa Nichols and the 4 female daughters in that reference in comparison, while other factors at that time. Because why would attention to detail for a type like that ever be important to pay attention to? So, I wasn't ever interested in that, ever, specifically that, in that reference. And so if, at any point in time, CID was contacted by Mary Evangelina Osteen and or David Osteen of the Air Force. Well, isn't it normal for the chair force to stir up needless drama with the Army a bunch of times because, and they still come out of you still come from the Air Force, as far as that's concerned, from the Army. Just accept that. Then there's the aspects as to needless drama in another state, in another branch, in that hypothetical. So if that happened to be just because of a whiny baby that needed to accept the facts of the dress blue, as far as since 2004 through 2008, hey, maybe since those people were in the swinging community, they've met some people who have had some situations. And since certain other factors, as far as what was known regarding her dead brother, as far as those factors, gee, maybe certain other situations, I mean, it's just the state of Texas, how could that go? Regarding, what is that song? There's the irony. Bad Leroy Brown. Even if you got a 2-piece custom made. Just saying. Because, not that I am married. And I didn't get the divorce from my dead ex-husband, obviously, before he died, though I was in a relationship before going out to Georgia and Florida. And if he needlessly was drug into it because of that type of those individuals, because of course, the wishful thoughts, if that were to be the case. So if that type ran his mouth and claimed that he had something that he didn't get, because that was not my goal. I had work to do, and that included saving the guy's life. But why would someone like those people ever care about that? Those types. In the hypothetical, of course, if there's any proof. So if there's that false report, because of the facts that in Fort Worth, the Chief Warrant Officer Tree had informed everybody regarding my ex-in-laws about those dress blues being stolen valor. And then the whole thing, as I explained in my book, Finding a Silver Lining, my copyrights, again, I wouldn't ever allow anybody to ever, because it's my life experiences, I wouldn't allow that, especially regarding those people, because those people were not ever friends with me. They may have thought so because of online, but that's the difference. I didn't actually know them, and in Finding a Silver Lining, I explained that. In 2014 is when it was copyrighted initially and sent to the Library of Congress. So, no, I don't want any involvement with those people. Just because he was stationed at Warner Robins or Warner Brothers, you know, MK Ultraing themselves, Air Force Base, doesn't translate to that. And just because the drill instructor at Lackland, you know, lacking the land, and that reference point, because what drill instructor after a graduation has occurred has ever messed around with the graduate? Knowing. But you know, those types, as far as maybe there was a wishful thought in comparison. Because I, unlike some people, if there is a relationship and I see certain things, I'm not interested. If there's any issues, and there are plenty of people who I have been friends with, even as far as dating situations, if I sense the slightest, or in whatever lifestyle aspects, slightest bit, I'll take a step back. Because I'm not about to be that. I'm not that type. I'm very particular. I've already dealt with a few things. I didn't need anything else as far as needless drama. So, you know, those types in reference to how Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nick Osteen had issues where they wanted to try to out ghetto Brianna Marie Nichols Lopez and Marissa Marie Nichols Lopez, as far as that's concerned. And so, if any needless problems occurred regarding that, and my son and my daughter, and or I, that sort of garbage as to those needless types, if my ex-in-laws, as far as their daughters have any issues as to why I don't have any need to be involved in their lives, would there be some reasons? Because if so, what would those reasons be that those would know? They can accept responsibility for those choices. Because if it was whatever needless drama, I was not playing any games. So, Brianna Marie Nichols Lopez had gotten yelled at for playing a voicemail where my daughter heard her dead father on the voicemail and didn't care about the repercussions. I yelled at her, she cried, I didn't care. As far as that was concerned, did not matter to me, because she knew my daughter was in elementary school. So, you know, then there were other situations because of McCoy Elementary School. And so those types of needless problems where I warned my two ex-sisters-in-law to actually be parents in comparison to wanting to be friends with their daughters. That's not how things go. Sometimes you can be after they're above a certain age and maturity level. If they are at that level where they're playing needless games, then no, that's not how that goes. And additionally, they're not my family. They're my son and my daughter's family. They're not mine. I didn't ever, just because I was kind to have the funeral arranged for Grandpa and Grandma Nichols, that's exactly something they should take in consideration. Here's the funeral, here's your severance, pay attention. Ex-in-laws. Pay attention. You're watching as he got put in the ground. That's the end. Anything that was by my choice was of my good-natured aspects. In comparison, I wasn't looking to be friends, especially when it comes to Mary and David Osteen, or bitch and douche in reference to Exotic Easter. Wasn't ever looking for that, and I additionally explained it. Well before actually going out there, as well as after having been out there, on top of in writing. So those people, if they additionally cause needless problems, because why would they ever think about anybody other than their selfish selves in that reference? Because why would they? They're just those types. So if they decided to get involved with stuff that they weren't invited to get involved in regards of 2008, 2009, 2010, 2012, 2011, of course, I don't care as far as that's concerned regarding my ex-in-laws. We're not friends. They have needed to understand that. And since Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen has been one of those name dropper types, there are those in the state of Texas who know my opinion when it comes to name dropping, when it comes to me. It is one thing to give me credit where credit is due. It's another thing to go and claim that buddy, and not. Huge difference. Because even with an individual that I had some acquaintanceship with, that was an issue in reference to certain factors. So those are my ex-in-laws. And then anything that I dealt with needlessly because of those people, well, why would I ever consider that? I wouldn't ever want that as a friend. Ever. That wouldn't ever be something I would ever find worthwhile. At all. In any capacity. Which I wouldn't be surprised if my biological mother were to be like, well, there's females that you could get along with that I wouldn't ever. I got along partially with one, but not the same level. Again, those types of needless situations as far as my biological mother, or bitch, biological father, or douche, and then biological sister, secondary bitch, as far as the Exotic Easter reference, in my opinion, regarding 2011. So, there's really no making up for me being interrogated by CID if my ex-in-laws had something to do with that. There's no making up for that in any friendship way or anything. That's you have finances to pay. And if they didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, because, David was in the Air Force, there are guys in the Army who really take that seriously, like really, really, really seriously. Rightfully so. Again, while there were plenty of individuals in my basic training who were angry at me for not calling myself something unless I graduated basic training, I explained it to my drill sergeants, despite what I was dealing with. This sort of situation kind of assists a different reason as to why. So yeah, I didn't graduate basic training. I was in the Army. I knew what happened. I wasn't seeking that sort of stuff. So then there's the additional aspects as to Old Tenet Presbyterian Church and those individuals from youth group, which were not friends. We weren't in that same situation because of, see, this is the problem. When you teach children to compete constantly with one another, why would you ever think that they would be friends with one another? When you actually, as parents, teach your children to compete in comparison to work with one another, why would you ever expect anything different? Especially in the East Coast, Northeast Coast during the 1980s and 1990s. So when you, parents and legal guardians, go and teach your children that, why would you expect them to be friends afterwards? They possibly could, but be realistic. It's common sense as far as that's concerned. Just saying. So, those types, as far as that, it is a reality. I've given warning after warning after warning after warning about quite a few situations. So, in that reference, if I dealt with that because of David Osteen and or Tony Walker Nichols regarding any aspects of regarding CID interrogation, just accept the facts. Regarding the Dress Blues situation, 2004, people know how that is. When it comes to, and the Vietnam War, ribbon, just pointing that out there. Even at McCoy Elementary School CFBISD board meeting, I actually had one of the individuals bring up Vietnam War. So if that was a situation, because why would I know? I didn't graduate basic training. I didn't steal valor. I know better. I haven't graduated basic training, so I haven't called myself that particular name. You guys really should accept that. Don't hold that against me, because I stood against it. I did return the Bronze Star to the colonel as I was informed, and I dealt with what I dealt with. So I didn't need any additional aspects in reference to any connection regarding J.C. Penney. If there was any aspect regarding that, do you think you could actually do a check to actually verify if you're going to go and have that much of an issue? Just to make sure that it's actually accurate in comparison. You know, don't assume, don't judge a book by their cover sort of situation. But if you had someone similar to the Fast Eddie's pool hall problem, and that, don't assume because of my biological mother and biologicals in that reference, because obviously I fought to join the Army. What type of hippie fights to join the Army? Goes and for months fights to actually join the Army. What type of hippie is that? Or is it that backwards to not understand that regarding certain individuals? You know, last I checked, during the Vietnam War, most of the people who were hippies didn't go into the military. They ran away. I fought to go in. Hello? Math. Not to be rude. Then there's Marine and Science Technology School, which don't blame me if I got in and Mike and Anna stirred up needless drama. Go blame them instead, because I was pissed that I didn't get to go. I had wanted to be in math. I was excited. You could see it when it comes to my scuba diving certifications that I was still pissed as far as that. So, just pointing that out there, you people should probably get your facts before assuming. Don't automatically jump to a conclusion. I mean, especially with the pattern of behavior. Oh, I didn't graduate basic training. You'd think that would mean something after some point in time where it would actually click that I wasn't stealing valor. I knew better than that. 10 commandments on that. Here, let me go into, as far as that's concerned, 10 commandments on earned valor. Thou shalt not blaspheme. Whatever ribbon or medal actually awarded to others who actually earned it, not by stolen valor, because thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not take in vanity. Thou shalt not covet what's not yours. See? People can make fun of for that, but which I dealt with as a child. I dealt with people that made fun of me for being as adamant about the 10 commandments. And I was made fun of because I could see the 10 commandments in everything, in every way. So, in regards of the 10 commandments in what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, thou shalt not blaspheme, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet what's not thous. So if in a willingness, if they're in a relationship, that's one thing. If they're not in a relationship, and whatever, it is what it is. Even in regards of modeling and performances, thou shalt not covet what thou isn't. Thou shalt not blaspheme. Just because of your jealousy, or envy, or vanity, or greed, or sloth, or pride. Unlike some people, when I've given compliments, I've actually meant them. I've learned over time that some people haven't ever actually. I've given compliments, though, and I've been genuine. It is as it is. So, in reference to the third portion of Exotic Easter, the poster where, I was the poster girl, but certain situations in reference to, in those regards, probably would have had a larger crowd if it had actually been correctly done. Instead, it is what it is. Anyway, fire code, I understand that at the same time. It is what it is in that reference. Anyway, Guards of Bitch and Douche, or David and Mary Osteen, and that hypothetical, when I had contacted in reference to my daughter and my son, that did not include you involved in my life at all whatsoever. That was not ever an invitation to you people in my life. That was an invitation regarding my son and my daughter for their best interests, for what would actually be best for them. I wasn't interested in you. I didn't ask for that. And while, yes, I was upset because I had every right to be upset because of everything that was going on, and there hasn't been a support system ever in place for me with everything that I have dealt with, except for the Vet Crisis Center. However, my ex-in-laws are exactly that, my ex-in-laws. They're not my family at all whatsoever. with what I was dealing with in the multitude of what actual support system has there actually been for me. For this lecture, the answer is there hasn't been any. At all. I've been to a multitude of different types of doctors. And so when I finally have something that actually is beneficial for me, what occurs? During my Medal of Honor art project trips, what occurs if those people regarding the Osteens were involved at all? I didn't invite them, and I do not give them the clearance, because I have that right, especially in regards of several factors. Those people specifically were only asked in 2012 or 2013 regarding my son and my daughter, not in reference to me. I wouldn't ever ask that. And just because they might have been a part of an email doesn't translate to that as a personal aspect. Ever. At all. Whatsoever. That requires in-person, face-to-face, in-person discussions in genuine truth, not any other way. And if the Osteens were warned, don't overstep your bounds, and they chose to, they overstepped their bounds without my permission, without my consent, and I wouldn't want them involved by my own choice as to what I have already dealt with needlessly because of those people. Because then there's the Cowboys dance hall situation, which Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. claimed that his friend David, it's his brother, his wife Mary, knew that if anybody had shown up saying that they had a child, if it wasn't a redhead, she knew who it was. Not interested in that at all. That is a disgraceful, disgusting, needless situation. And with the knowledge as to what was already going on, those people regarding my ex-in-laws have needed to not involve themselves in those ways especially. So if there's any connection, as I already wrote about as a hypothetical in the modern day book, if there's any accuracy to any connection, there's another set of needless problems. My ex-sister-in-law liked both of them. They liked some 1980s, 1990s drama. I wasn't interested. Those types of needless problems, that's what's wrong with pop culture in that sort of way, in my opinion. Because you've got plenty. Because, you know, Mary thought it was funny that I didn't know movies. Mary thought it was funny that I didn't know pop culture references. I did what I could to remain calm. Same thing with my other ex-sister-in-law. You know, those types. I don't care if they don't like being called those types at all, because they are just those types. They needed to just accept the fact that I personally did not want them in my life that way. I personally did not need them in my life that way because my son, my daughter, and I did not need that at all. So if this has to do with their dead relative, which was his fault, he chose to wear the dress blues with stolen valor in San Antonio, Texas, Military City, USA. If they don't like that, if that's their problem as to that. And while I wish I could take credit for that, I really do. I wish I could. I wish I could. Unfortunately, I can only tell the truth. And so there is the 22 situation where Fort Sam Houston, where he shot himself because of the facts that I wasn't willing to tolerate certain things. Mike, my biological father, drove him to the emergency room on Fort Sam Houston. Tried to get sympathy from me, and I wasn't having any of it. Then there's the additional factors in regards of the Jade Wolf, whatever, and those needless problems additionally. So those factors that I didn't consent to regarding a few things. So if there was, somebody who did an open casting call and didn't think about any repercussions as to that sort of stuff, well, common sense is kind of important. It's just common sense. Because why would you think that would be beneficial to me? Because obviously there is a difference. But those types, because my Medal of Honor art project trips, congratulations. Because of your lack of respect, well, why would I need to? I dealt with a lot of stuff because of that. Whether people believed in the historical and spiritual rubbing of the Medal of Honor marker had nothing to do with the name, the Medal of Honor marker. Those situations of those types of people, my First Amendment right, not yours. You do not have freedom of expression to trample on mine. You don't have that right. But, I already grew up with those types of people where they didn't pay attention because they were so desensitized at Alternate Presbyterian Church. And then when the basement was put in, well, it hollowed them. So, in that hypothetical, it just hollowed them. Not hallowed, hollowed. There's a difference between an O and an A. So, in that third portion of Exotic Easter and that particular situation where, pervs in Toyland, isn't that an irony? Because they would only see that way. Because they wouldn't see it as real, they'd see it as a toy. In comparison, and not paying attention to each and every other individual regarding their markers in the area, their family members, their loved ones, because why would those types who don't pay attention to those facts. Why would they care? It's not just the aspects of my Medal of Honor art project and where I go for that. That's all of the individuals in the areas. So that's all of those individuals' family members, loved ones, spouses, somebody's brother, somebody's daughter, whatever in comparison. Because why would you pay attention to that regarding not just my Medal of Honor art project trips, but the other factors? Because common sense, human decency, so on and so forth. So just because I brought up the facts of the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 does not translate to others being allowed certain factors. ADA laws do apply. Whether or not people realize it, if you pay taxes, doesn't matter what level. So if you pay taxes in reference to purchasing items, gasoline, and then there's even bus taxes if you ride the bus. Additionally, income tax, whatever taxes, you are officially obliged to abide by the ADA laws to the best of capability. So while I have my issues with the after effects from my head injury, and I can't figure out certain things, I don't deny that, I do make the best efforts possible despite certain things. So for example, when I've gone out, even though I know I could have a disabled license plate, as far as that's concerned, I choose not to. Because in the areas where I might not remember, not know, whatever, at the very minimum, that's something that I could do, even though I know that I don't remember everything. I do make the best attempts, though. So, but that does not give anybody the right to trample on any of that, either. Just because of my kindness does not translate to the way certain others think. Because I myself have my own rights as well, which others have needed to accept, to recognize, and abide by the fact that I myself have my own rights. So, I have made sure to make as best of every effort to be respectful. Obviously. So those factors in reference to my ex-in-laws as to the hypotheticals of, well, if by chance those people had shown up to Sapphire at all, and then could have spoken with me in truth, face-to-face, in person, in Sapphire, in truth, well then obviously we weren't friends. Because if it was the situations regarding testing my memory deficits and my cognitive disorders, then obviously we weren't friends. If that was any aspect of, that's something that's needed to be considered. So, those situations, I don't test people that I have considered as friends. Because people that, and you know, fine. I obviously could have made mistakes. I haven't ever denied that. But unlike some people, whether they were acquaintances or friends or considered as family or even family, and that even includes people that I've had dating, romantic, whatever relationships with, I didn't ever test them. I asked questions. There were certain concerns I had for certain individuals, but I didn't ever test them. I didn't ever put them through things needlessly. And unlike some people, I didn't hide when it came to just being open and honest. I may not have had the best of words, but I have made the actual attempts in comparison, obviously. Because I've actually made attempts to have discussions in comparison to others, as per whatever hypothetical, phone number, obviously social media aspects, and now especially since my website, www.susanmealing.com. That instantly is enough. Because I didn't ever hide that during the time frame of being in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle. And the only way it can be consenting is if it's informed in order to have that regarding consent. Otherwise, what does that legally translate to? So, back in the year of 2013, I made a YouTube video with everything that I was dealing with, that had come to that point. How much since my updates of my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website would be capable to clarify those factors, in addition to finding a silver lining, and finding the silver lining, and the modern day book, the lecture, as far as my official YouTube video. I suppose, technically, that would be 3 books, correct? Well, I guess in reference to the third portion. But then you have my journal blog, my website, www.susanmealing.com, my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, and my other work that I've been working on. Because I've been working on that. I haven't ever hidden that either. I informed people that I was medically retired from the Army, and I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 during basic training. I informed people of that. Just that alone is informing officially. I informed people about the rave and Brackenridge. I informed people about medical hold unit and CID. I informed people that there could be the possibility of, and I informed people of my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and ex-in-laws. Those people, that's not my fault. That's their choices as to what those people did. Hypothetically. So, I suppose the situations, now David Osteen can think. If he had made a call to CID for Mary, and since he's been in foster care and orphanages, what did my son and my daughter go through needlessly because of his callousness that he would know. He could take responsibility for that, because he would know from what I was informed of regarding him in orphanages. He can think about that. He can remember those aspects. And any situation regarding my biological father as well, who had informed of, he can think about that and remember those factors. They can think about their choices. And two males, they can remember and think about my daughter and my son in elementary school as to the hypotheticals of, and if my biological sister had anything to do with any needless problems. Well, don't pretend that we were ever close then. Obviously. I mean, denied in Austin in 2010, 2011, and the other situations because of that abomination of a wedding. And those situations. And if she didn't think that that type of a family was going to be that way, don't pretend. Because she was raised to look for that. She wasn't raised to stand on her own 2 feet. She wasn't raised to be educated on her own the way I was. I'm the one who is taught. Don't go to any school to find your MRS. Scuba diving, I earned 26 scuba diving certifications. And only when I thought my last certification, which was my 25th scuba diving certification, which was Cancun, Cozumel, that was when I allowed myself to actually think about it, because of the way I was raised in comparison. So, those types. And Mike said that he had been in Texas when he was a child or a teenager. That's an additional factor regarding a few situations. Hypothetically. But my son and my daughter were not up for that. I didn't give permission for that. I wouldn't ever purposefully put my son and my daughter in harm's way. I know better. I did everything I could for my son and my daughter's best interests and safety. I defended my son. I defended my daughter in my house in San Antonio, as well as before that. I constantly dealt with that. There are the emergency room records as far as that's concerned. When I was pregnant, I did explain those other factors. So, I dealt with being locked in a room with my son and my daughter when I went to go and keep them safe, because I had the nerve to protect my son and my daughter. There's a point in time, anybody in regards to the San Antonio house, the front window had to be replaced as far as a certain area, because I had the nerve to care for my infant daughter and take care of my son at the same time. And when the bottle situation, my now dead ex-husband threw that bottle through that window. So, additionally, there's all the other times that I had to protect my son and my daughter because of those needless problems. So, but those types of those people, hypothetically, as to whatever assumptions hypothetically. You should probably just ask someone instead of assuming, stirring up needless problems, thinking you actually know better instead. So I dealt with being interrogated for hours by CID. On top of that, a bunch of other situations. Those types. And then I lived in a homeowners association as well. Those types. Having watched as I was pregnant with my daughter, and as my now dead ex-husband drank a beer with the other neighbors, watching as I, pregnant with my daughter, mowed the lawn. Don't pretend that's not sexist, machismo, feminazi types right there, as far as that's concerned. Then there's the homeowners association. Then there's the Apple Creek subdivision as well, regarding those 4 teenagers. And my property, I didn't invite those other 3 teenagers. They weren't invited. I personally did not invite them. I was a cordial individual, though I personally did not invite them. And there is those rights. And then there's the high school, as far as when I went to go pick up Patricia and her little temper tantrum, because why would she ever pay attention? And because of the assumptions as to the fact, yes, I didn't graduate basic training, though I had always been the sponsor. In comparison, those 10 commandments seem really important more and more. But people who are all adamant about how they had been a deacon and a trustee and all that, you know, it is as it is. So, in that reference of whatever connection portions of whichever can be interchanged in those exotic Easter 2011 situations, because other people have needed to accept the facts. I had always been honest. Other people have had to accept the facts of the stuff that was not ever anything to blame, except for other people. I accept where I have messed up. I haven't ever hidden that. Just putting that out there. And as much as I've gone on and on and on and on and explained, you know, unlike where in my reference, I haven't had that. I've had to seek out information. I personally haven't had the luxury of other people explaining in depth to me. I've had a lot of people assume that I knew, but nobody really explained in quite a few ways. I had to go and research a lot to be capable to use words, to speak. I got to deal with a bunch of individuals in the lifestyle because of their opinions in reference to the mentor program and all that. And then I dealt with the other aspects of, and those needless problems on top of what I was already dealing with. So I could just walk away, because obviously that is not how you treat someone that you actually want involved with the lifestyle, just so you know. Obviously. Because if individuals thought that that was how you treat someone that you want in the lifestyle, you are mistaken. That's another reason in reference to in 2019, 2020, and 2021, there wasn't any need for me to go out. There wasn't a point in time where I actually had ever had the sensation that I was ever preferred at any event. That hadn't ever been. Not as much as I had to do. So if other people thought that being bratty, no, that's not how you get me involved at all. It's either in genuine truth and honesty with etiquette and respect, or if you're going to act a certain way, I will not tolerate being around certain situations. So, doesn't matter whether in reference to the civilian recreational scuba diving areas and or multiple areas regarding what's supposed to be considered the consenting adult lifestyle, there has not been any point in time I've ever been capable to relax regarding either one. So while some people have had that luxury, I haven't. The closest I had was literally one day in comparison to the entire Cozumel trip. Just one day. Just one. Though I wasn't scuba diving and it technically wasn't really even relaxing because I had to pay attention to other stuff. So I didn't really get to relax at all. I mean, I had some-ish, but not really enough that would actually be considered a recreational scuba dive at any point in time. Not in the state of Texas did I ever have a recreational scuba dive. Not in the Gulf of Mexico. Not one recreational scuba dive did I have. And obviously out in Boca or from there and the Vandenberg, I didn't ever have a recreational scuba dive. Ever. Even the second scuba dive regarding the Vandenberg, I had to make sure of stuff because of a few factors. I had to handle the situations. So no, I haven't had any recreational scuba diving. No matter how much I wish I actually could have. And then, in reference to what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. Well, there wasn't a point in time where I could just relax. Because every individual, I mean, I was fine having discussions. However, because of other factors during the time frame, there wasn't ever a point where I got to ever relax. So then, and that doesn't matter whether in reference to the state of Texas or Oregon or Washington State. There's not a point in time I've actually been capable to just relax and enjoy myself going out. I've been capable to have good discussions, but then there are other factors. And so in regards to, there were a few times when who I was engaged to twice, there were a few times then, despite what was going on during the time frame, and I still had to stand up for myself and deal with a bunch of other needless problems. So then, out in Washington State, well, there was ish, a point in time. I mean, it also was after 2019, and it was one time-ish. Didn't really last very long, obviously. And so, I mean, I've had good discussions, but because of the way I am, and with what I was working on. So, while some people could relax, well, lucky you. Awesome. It's not easy being a female in the lifestyle, whichever side, whether the BDSM or swinger lifestyle, just because I enjoy wearing clothes as far as what other people think. I enjoy my outfits. However, in that reference, there are those aspects of. I enjoy dancing to a degree, but I only can do certain things for so long because of the after effects from my head injury. And so, since the time frame of not having the same responsibilities as to my minor-aged son and my minor-aged daughter, while keeping and maintaining and sustaining a schedule as best as I could, ever since 2018, I haven't had the need to have an actual schedule the same way for my son and my daughter. So while some people may have assumed whatever they assumed, no, I deal with headaches and I deal with migraines. I would be going out a whole bunch more to clubs and stuff like that if I didn't have to maintain a schedule. If I didn't have headaches and migraines. But since I don't need to maintain a schedule the same way, making sure my son and my daughter get to school and do what they need to do and all that, and making sure that I'm taking care of everything as best as I can, pushing forward and all that, and I don't have that. That's not something I need to take care of anymore in the same capacity regarding the schedules. So, if there were those who assumed, well, you know how to spell assume, but you know why you shouldn't assume. Because you know how to spell assume. Right, this lecture. So, if there were those who, whatever thought processes of, no, I would go out, I do prefer to go out, but because of what I've had to take care of on my own, because I haven't had the luxury of a chauffeur taking care of everything, or a relationship taking care of everything, I haven't had that luxury. I've had to always take care of it myself. I haven't had that where other people, do. I've been in relationships, they have been far from submissive though, because, that would require certain things, and because of the aspects of, can't do certain things in front of my minor age children at the time. Obviously, being a responsible mom, in comparison to some people's hypothetical assumptions. So there's that, because of not doing that in front of my son and not doing that in front of my daughter, because of knowing better, unlike some people hypothetically assuming, because of those types. Mike and Anna, those assumptions, because why would you ever think for yourself in comparison to assuming? Because that would require actually having faith in me and actually trusting me in comparison to the needless problems those two, along with my biological sister, have needlessly been. They acknowledged, because I caught them telling me lies. In my backyard, in my house in San Antonio, I caught each one of them. My biological sister stopped coming over my house because I had caught her in so many. And she tried to claim, well, just testing. And when I went and pulled my fist back, she, for some reason, didn't want to be in my house anymore. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I guess it was my right to stand my ground and protect myself and my property. I think that might have been it. I think so. Fairly certain. Apparently, she didn't like that. I don't know. And then Mike and Anna both got caught at same garbage. And so for those who need to know, the first time that they largely got caught was in the year of 2005. Second time they got caught was in 2006. And then they got caught again in 2008. And then they got caught again in 2012. So those people have needlessly stirred up drama, as I warned people, throughout the state of Texas at those times. So where I could have gotten back to the East Coast regarding New Jersey to see the evening skyline from a location that I actually would recognize. Maybe there's a few people who could take in consideration my biological mother had told me on a phone call within the month of September that she knew a bunch of people who were capable to make it out of the World Trade Center because they had been practicing airplane drills. Now, my babysitter's husband had been director of security at the World Trade Center and the World Trade Center Plaza. Now, what's weird about this, he and his security guys did not ever practice for that. There wasn't anybody in regards to, at the time frame I'll acknowledge because it was moved in 1998, but Anna had informed me that she knew people that had an entire floor in one of the World Trade Centers, towers, an entire floor. So those who have seen the Bank of America Tower in Dallas, in downtown, that's small. That's not even a tower. I mean, it's a tower for Texas, but it's not a Twin Tower from New York City back in the 1980s and 1990s. That's the equivalent of a height for some of the walkway areas to a degree. That's not a tower height-wise or width-wise. For that clarification. So my biological mother said that she knew an entire floor of people. Remember that nightmare I had from second grade? That people were just like, oh, she's just a child. Oh, she's just a child. Remember that? Anybody who I knew in person, face-to-face in person, that I spoke with, remember that? And all that. So Anna on the phone when she was at McHenry County Government Center in Woodstock, Illinois, she had informed me that she knew people that had an entire floor of World Trade Center. And each month, from the time frame of the early 1990s, they were practicing. They'd tell people that they were doing fire drill practices, but they were also mainly practicing for an airplane flying into the World Trade Center. That was their practice. Now that's the early 1990s, when I was still assisting Joe Jose every now and then to check. There wasn't ever, now granted, okay, I can honestly say there wasn't an airplane check. Usually I was running and making sure that the guys were doing their job. So if I got into certain areas, Patrick Kennedy would as to those situations. That's kind of the irony. It is an irony because are you sure I should be? I don't know about that because that would be a Joe Jose thing. Like, well, why was she in there? That sort of that would be a Joe Jose sort of situation, ironically, regarding the Bank of America Tower in a different way. That would be it'd be a huge, and so yeah, it is what it is. I can laugh mainly because I know what Joe Jose would have done, and I know at the same time that now in the year of 2022, compared to then in 2011, Joe Jose would have been flabbergasted of having an employee that would bring a check to pay back the phone call situation. He wouldn't have known what to do. I know that. I do know that for a fact because I knew how he was about security. And I knew some of the guys had certain situations. And so sometimes not jumping the gun is important. Sometimes it's important to evaluate correctly in comparison. So, but that's a whole other situation. And so, because some of those guys, they would have, they shouldn't have. There were situations, and it was as it was. It was a very different time, and so they still took their job seriously. But it was as it was at that time. Nonetheless, Anna had said that, she knew a whole floor. And anybody in the state of Texas regarding the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle and any connection in that reference, you could see certain hypotheticals. So, but none of the drills that any of the guys regarding security had done had anything to do with an airplane, which is an irony regarding my modeling, because if by chance there were those who had heard that phone call in regards to McHenry County Government Center and stuff regarding knowing the after effects of my head injury, I knew more back in the time frame on. But because Mike, Anna, and Patricia purposefully told me names they knew I wouldn't know. Because Mike had been in the state of Texas when he was younger. Nobody wanted to listen to me. And Anna was a fan of TRF. So, there's that. Excalibur Fair comparison. So that's a different, yeah, no. Yeah, she didn't understand why I was upset and on guard instantly. Didn't see why. I think it's pretty common sense-ish, but especially when you take in consideration the year, as far as 2005, all you have to do is take that in consideration to what I was accustomed to dealing with in my house in San Antonio. A bunch of people didn't want to believe me. They thought I was joking. Maybe that's something to think about. Anyway, those situations are as they are. And other people, such as my ex-in-laws, have really needed to just accept those facts. And actually ask my permission, not by proxy. Actually asking me, not any other way. I'm quite particular. I've always been that way. So, while I'm sure maybe hypothetically Mary thought that I would actually need assistance compared to having been born and raised in New Jersey, the tri-state area, the 1980s and 1990s. Yeah, okay, yeah, like I'd really, no, no, not at all. I just have standards and requirements. And while some people might think the way they think, that's their opinion. Comparison. And how to actually get the sensation where I actually sense that aspect of being wanted in a positive way. Well, there are etiquette standards for that in comparison. So that's kind of a big thing. Etiquette. Anybody who's I'm a leather dominant female. So I have my standards. You probably shouldn't ask male dominance as to how to do that in that hypothetical. And you couldn't ask, you really couldn't ask professional dominance or professional dominatrixes. You couldn't ever ask them because they wouldn't ever know as to what would be. Although I wouldn't be surprised if a few males actually gave that warning and were like, yeah, but she's not a pro, she's just a leather dominant female. Comparison, it's not the same. They would have been correct. Because it's not the same. It's not being rude, it's just not the same. So anyway, is as it is. So, that exotic Easter 2011 situation, I'm sure there's a few who could take a few situations as to some examples, maybe in different areas of the lifestyle in certain locations, hypothetically. And so I guess it depends on, I guess maybe the characters might be gender fluid in reference to that exotic Easter reference, depending on the situation. So today is the 16th of May, 2022. Make sure to go to, there's the 16th of May, 2022. Make sure to go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos, and share the link to my official YouTube videos in conjunction. If you're going to leave a comment, do make sure to have etiquette and respect, please. And yes, I would guesstimate this particular one right here in regards to that Austin abomination of a wedding. If you need the other aspect up for clarification.